Where does happiness come from? Can this book answer the question that humankind has been trying to answer since the dawn of time? The author found, by combining ancient wisdom with modern psychology, that happiness comes from both within yourself as well as the world around you. The key is just to get the balance right and understand the mind. This is Detox Dan presenting my top 5 takeaways from Jonathan Haidt's The Happiness Hypothesis. Takeaway number 1. The divided self. If passion drives, let reason hold the reins. Benjamin Franklin. The first key to understand how to be happy in life is to realize that the mind is divided into parts that sometimes disagree completely. This makes it hard to do what, quote, you set out to do, when there might be another you that day who is more in charge. There are many good ancient metaphors representing the divided mind. Plato, for example, used the description of a chariot with 2 horses. One of the horses, a part of your mind, is noble, honorable, and have good self-control. The other horse is deaf, numb to whips, and does mostly whatever he wants. A similar metaphor came from the Buddha, which is the one mainly used in this book. It describes the mind like a rider on the back of an elephant. The conscious and reasoning rider tries to steer the direction of the two, but it only has limited control over the subconscious elephant when it decides to go the other way. Your main goal is to get the rider and the elephant to cooperate. The first strategy one can use is to increase the skill of the rider. This is a big part of what emotional intelligence is. The idea here is to realize that you will never win in a contest of will against the elephant, so you sophisticatedly distract the elephant instead, or remove yourself from situations where the elephant will prevail. A classic example would be not to bring those cookies into your home. You know you don't stand a chance. Increasing the skill of the rider is all great, and is something you should practice throughout your life. But there is an even cooler part to the rider-elephant teamwork equation, in my opinion. Takeaway number 2. Taming the Elephant. Yes, taming the elephant is possible. Phew, what a relief. Warning though, it is pretty damn hard. The elephant is a wild beast after all. The only 2 proven techniques for manually taming the elephant, according to the author, are meditation and cognitive behavioral therapy. Of course, the Buddha was onto this. I mean, he literally created the metaphor. In meditation, you practice focusing your attention but without thinking. This with time ultimately changes your autopilot thought processes from being run by default wants and needs to more carefully and deliberately chosen thoughts. This is equivalent to taming the elephant. Your subconscious doesn't run the show anymore. The end goal and final proof that you tame the elephant is when you have broken free from attachments. You can just enjoy the roller coaster of life without reacting too strongly to the ups and downs. Cognitive behavioral therapy is all about challenging your irrational thought patterns. For example, someone who is very depressed is probably filled with dysfunctional beliefs such as, I am not good enough and the world is stacked against me. Let's illustrate with an exercise how one might get out of this subconscious mind pattern. Take a situation that bothers you, something you ruminate on a lot. Write down everything you think and feel about the situation with a no filter. This alone will help you break the negative feedback loop. But we can do even better. Stare at all your unfiltered thoughts and see if you can find parts that are completely rational. Then challenge these thoughts by coming up with better alternative ones. If you repeat this over time, your autopilot thought process will gradually become more accurate and productive. Your elephant is becoming more cooperative. Takeaway number 3. Finding faults in others. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Jesus. When I read this chapter, I realized that my mind had fallen back into the unconscious habit of judging everything and everyone around me. I decided to try to make an experiment. No matter what, I wouldn't put a label on anything that happened in the upcoming days. Easier said than done, but for the most part it went well. Very quickly, the mind went from dark and dense to extremely light and happy. Even my health seems to be better off, with a lower resting heart rate and higher heart rate variability. Crazy results, one might think, but this is not that surprising. People have known that judgment is the antagonist to well-being and happiness for millennia. To break out of judgment, and the traits that tend to follow: moralism, righteousness, hypocrisy. The first thing one needs to do is seeing life as a game and take it less seriously. In ancient India, life is an experiment called samsara that we all take part of. We all have our roles to play in it, but we don't need to be attached to the fruits of our labor. Buddha went a step further and said that the world as we see it is an illusion created by our minds. Breaking the illusion is the end of suffering. An old Chinese Zen master said that one must be non-judgmental to be able to follow the perfect way. Maybe your mind is racing with arguments about why this won't work and why this takeaway was a waste of time. If so, gently pay attention to the feeling and let it go. Takeaway number 4. The happiness formula. H equals S plus C plus V. That wasn't so hard. Your happiness level is just a function of 3 variables. S is your biological set point for happiness, which differs from person to person. Since this one is fixed, we don't need to focus on it. We'll start with the C to figure out how we can maximize H. C stands for external conditions. As human beings, we are very good at adapting to new things, such as promotions and bigger houses. We call this the adaptation principle. The adaptation principle makes it a bit tricky for us to increase our happiness through more money. But there are some external things you can acquire in your life that won't fully fall prey to the adaptation principle. Living in noisy environments has shown to be permanently bad for one's happiness. You will never get fully used to it, so you're better off moving. Long commutes are also not great. A lot of people buy a bigger house, but that is located further away from work and friends. This usually backfires, since we get used to the bigger space, but not to longer commuting time. Other, less obvious stuff is also included in external conditions. For example, a sense of control in your life is shown to increase happiness significantly. When you feel in control of things that are happening around you, you gain more energy and enjoy better health. Conversely, a lack of control is highly correlated with stress. Lastly, good relationships are something we never fully adapt to either. A good marriage and close friends can be permanent sources of happiness. Takeaway number 5. The V. No, not that V. We're still talking about the happiness formula. V stands for voluntary activities. Included in these activities are the things that help you react to your environment in a subjectively better fashion, like meditation and CBT mentioned above. But there are more ways to interact with life to increase happiness. The first one is progression toward difficult goals. Facing adversity and overcoming obstacles on your path to success is great for happiness. Every time you take a step in the right direction, your brain gets rewarded. The important thing to note here, though, is that accomplishing goals is not necessarily great for happiness, which we all seem to believe. Progression itself, or the journey, is a much more reliable source of happiness. The actual achievement tends to fall prey to the adaptation principle after the initial short-lived high. Another type of activity you can do is one that generates a flow state. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi found that people were the happiest when they were fully engaged in a challenging activity. This was anything from physical activity, painting, music, writing, or simply an intense conversation. The key was that the activity fully engaged the attention. I find this concept fascinating and life-changing, so I highly recommend you watch my whole video summary of his book Flow next. That was it for my top 5 takeaways of Jonathan Haidt's The Happiness Hypothesis.